Being home alone is supposed to be peaceful, safe. But what if you weren't really alone? What if something or someone was watching you right now? Where are they watching from? Are they outside the window, inside the house, or closer than you think? I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments which state or city you're watching from. If you enjoy true horror stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Sarah had been looking forward to this weekend for months. Her parents were going out of town, leaving her alone in their old two-story house for the first time in her life. She had imagined it 100 times, the freedom to eat whatever she wanted, watch late-night movies, blast music as loud as she pleased, and stay up past her usual bedtime. But as soon as her parents' car disappeared down the driveway, the house felt different, silent, almost too quiet. Normally, the place was filled with the hum of life, her dad tinkering in the garage, her mom moving around the kitchen, the dog scratching at the back door. Now, there was nothing, just an oppressive, unnatural silence. Sarah shook her head and laughed nervously. She told herself she was imagining it. Houses settle. Old houses creak. That was it. Still, her stomach tightened, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, even though she knew no one else was home. She carried her bag of popcorn into the living room, turned on the TV, and cranked up her headphones. Maybe music would keep her calm. For a while, it worked. She laughed at the movies, munched on popcorn, and tried to ignore the quiet house. Then, around 9, she heard it. A faint creak upstairs. She froze, her hand clutching the popcorn bag like a lifeline. Footsteps? That didn't make sense. She lived alone. The house was empty. It's just the house, she whispered to herself. Old houses make noises. But even as she tried to convince herself, another creak followed, closer this time. She held her breath. Then it came, the whisper. Low, deliberate, unmistakable. Sarah. Her heart nearly stopped. She tore off her headphones and listened, straining in the silence. There it was again, almost directly behind her. Sarah. Trembling, she tried to tell herself it was the wind. The house had old, drafty windows. Maybe a branch had brushed against one. But the sound didn't feel natural. It was too intentional, too deliberate. Her palms were sweating. She gripped her phone and tiptoed toward the kitchen to grab it. That's when she noticed something. The basement door, slightly open. Her stomach sunk. She never left it unlocked. A cold dread washed over her. Panic and curiosity wrestled inside her. She wanted to run, to leave the house, to call a neighbor, but she also needed to know. She edged closer, moving slowly, every step measured. Her sneakers squeaked faintly against the hardwood floor, but it felt deafening in the oppressive quiet. The basement was pitch black. Her flashlight barely cut through the darkness, but she could make out shadows shifting among the old boxes and tools. Maybe something had fallen. Maybe it was nothing. Then she heard it again, almost at her ear, and froze in terror. Sarah. This time it was closer. She felt the hair on her arms stand on end. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. She considered calling 911, but her voice caught in her throat. She needed to see. She needed to know. Summoning every ounce of courage she had, she pushed the basement door open. The hinges screamed, and the sound echoed through the empty house. A damp, musty smell hit her instantly, sour and rotten, making her gag. She swept her flashlight across the floor. Footprints. A backpack that wasn't hers. And then movement. A shadow shifted in the far corner. Her light trembled. She whispered, barely audibly, "Who's there?" No answer, only breathing. Slow, deliberate, heavy. She could hear it now, scraping against the concrete floor. In the corner of her eye, she saw the shoes move slightly, just a few inches. Sarah's stomach dropped. She screamed, turned, and bolted upstairs, slamming the door behind her. She locked it as quickly as she could and pressed the phone to her ear, hands shaking so violently the line almost disconnected. Within minutes, police arrived. The basement door was forced open. Officers swept the room and found evidence that made Sarah's blood run cold. Someone had been living in the basement for days. Cans of food, a thin blanket, even notes scrawled on the walls. "She will come down." Sarah shivered as she looked at the scene. Whoever had been down there had been watching, waiting, avoiding cameras, moving silently, using the creaks of the old house to mask their presence. She had been alone, with a stranger, seconds away from confronting them in the dark. The officers reassured her that she was lucky, that it could have been much worse, but the realization didn't make her feel any safer. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak, every shadow felt alive. The wind slamming the windows sounded like footsteps. Even the dog whining in the other room made her jump. She checked every lock, every window, over and over. She couldn't shake the feeling that he could still be there, watching. Days passed, but her fear didn't fade. Sarah's parents installed cameras, reinforced doors, and added motion sensors. But every time she was home alone, the anxiety returned, creeping up her spine like icy fingers. The house had gone from a sanctuary to a trap. She realized then that being home alone wasn't about freedom. It was about vulnerability. That the scariest thing wasn't the silence. It was what might be hiding in it. Weeks later, Sarah noticed small things. A door slightly ajar when she was sure she had closed it. The sound of breathing when the house was empty. Objects not where she remembered leaving them. Every time she tried to tell herself it was paranoia, doubt crept in. Maybe it was. Maybe she was imagining it. But deep down, she knew she wasn't. She would never feel safe in that house again. At least not alone. Even now, years later, she tells the story to friends and they laugh nervously, brushing it off as teenage imagination. But she knows the truth. She knows what it feels like to be truly alone. To hear your name whispered in the dark when no one is supposed to be there. She knows the cold, paralyzing fear that comes from realizing you are not as safe as you think. The memory of that basement, the creaking steps, the shadow in the corner, those images are etched in her mind forever. And sometimes, late at night, she still hears it in her dreams. A whisper. Sarah. It was a cold autumn evening when Kevin, 16, found himself home alone for the first time. His parents had gone out to a friend's party, leaving him with strict instructions: lock all doors, don't answer the phone for strangers, and absolutely no inviting friends over. Kevin thought it would be easy. He had played video games, snacked, and watched movies alone many times before. But there was something different about tonight. The first hour passed without incident. Kevin ate leftover pizza, scrolled through his phone, and tried to immerse himself in a new game. He laughed to himself, feeling grown-up and responsible. But then, just past 8, he noticed a movement out of the corner of his eye. At first, he thought it was his reflection in the window. But then he saw it again. A face, pale and shadowed, staring at him from outside. Kevin froze. His stomach dropped. It was a man, standing completely still, staring straight at him through the living room window. Kevin's first thought was disbelief. Maybe it was a neighbor passing by on the sidewalk. But the man's gaze didn't waver. His eyes seemed locked on Kevin, unblinking, unyielding.
Panic began to rise in Kevin's chest. He closed the blinds slowly, trying not to make a sound, and backed away. But as he did, the man shifted, moving just enough to keep himself in view. Kevin grabbed his phone and called his best friend, whispering frantically, "There's someone outside my window. I don't know what to do." His friend laughed nervously, assuming Kevin was exaggerating, but Kevin knew better. He locked every door and window he could, double-checking the deadbolt on the front door. The house felt different now, smaller, darker, like it was closing in around him. Every noise, every gust of wind sounded amplified. Then, he noticed something terrifying. The man wasn't just outside the window anymore. Kevin's heart stopped. The man had circled to the side of the house. He caught a glimpse of his shadow moving near the garage. The man was waiting, watching, his hands pressed against the glass of a side window, peering in. Kevin felt trapped. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. Hours passed like this. Kevin sat in the living room, phone in hand, listening to every sound outside. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prankster. Maybe he was imagining things. But deep down, he knew the truth. Someone was outside, waiting for him. At some point, Kevin noticed the lights outside flicker. He realized the man was testing the house, seeing if the lights were on, checking for signs that someone was awake. Kevin's heart pounded with terror as he remembered the horror stories he'd heard about people watching homes before breaking in. The tension escalated when Kevin heard the back door creak. He had locked it, he was sure of it, but as he moved to check, he heard footsteps on the back porch. Slow, deliberate. Kevin ducked behind the couch, heart racing. He could see the door from where he hid. The handle rattled. The man was trying to open it. Kevin held his breath, praying the door would hold. Minutes felt like hours. The sound of breathing, scraping shoes, and soft knocks echoed in his ears. Then, suddenly, silence. Kevin dared to peek around the couch. The door hadn't been forced open. The man was gone. Or had he moved to another window? Kevin didn't know. He didn't want to find out. When the police finally arrived, Kevin had managed to dial 911 without making a sound. They searched the perimeter. No one was found. No footprints, no evidence. The man had vanished like a ghost. Kevin was shaken but relieved. The officers advised him to stay with a neighbor that night and warned him to install cameras. Kevin couldn't sleep at all, lying awake, imagining the man's face, the unblinking eyes watching him from the darkness. The next day, Kevin's parents returned. He told them everything. They were horrified and installed security cameras, motion sensor lights, and reinforced all doors and windows. But Kevin couldn't shake the memory. Every time he walked past a window, he imagined someone watching. Every gust of wind, every creak sent chills down his spine. Weeks later, Kevin noticed something even scarier. Through the corner of his eye, he sometimes saw movement outside when no one was there. Shadows in the garden, shapes near the garage, figures on the street. Each time he looked directly, there was nothing, but the fear lingered. He realized he had been marked. The man had seen him, and even though he never returned, he knew he would never feel truly safe home alone again. At night, Kevin now sleeps with the lights on, blinds drawn, and phone within reach. He's constantly aware of the windows, the corners, the sounds outside. He knows what it feels like to be home alone, and realize that the most terrifying part isn't the intruder physically breaking in. It's the knowledge that he could have, and the fact that you were being watched the entire time. Years later, Kevin tells this story quietly, warning friends never to underestimate the danger of being home alone. Even when everything seems calm and empty, sometimes the scariest things are the ones you can't see. The unblinking eyes in the dark, the shadow that waits silently, the intruder who disappears without a trace. They linger in your mind long after the night is over. Kevin will never forget that night. The man in the window isn't just a memory, it's a warning. When home alone, you are never truly alone.
Emma, 13, had always loved her small, cozy house in the suburbs. It was the kind of house where neighbors waved from the sidewalk, kids rode bikes in the driveway, and parents felt safe letting their children play outside until the street lights came on. But tonight, for the first time, Emma was home alone. Her parents had gone to a late-night event in the city, and they assured her she'd be fine. They reminded her to lock every door, never open it for strangers, and call them if she needed anything. Emma nodded confidently. After all, she had been home alone a few times before, and nothing had ever gone wrong. At first, the night was uneventful. Emma curled up in her bed with a book, the soft glow of her bedside lamp illuminating the pages. She had the TV on low in the living room for background noise, and the house smelled faintly of the dinner her mom had made earlier. She felt perfectly safe, until she heard it. A slow, deliberate creak. The kind of creak that sounded like someone was stepping lightly across the wooden floor. At first, she thought it was the house settling, the old floorboards shifting under the weight of, well, no one. She shook her head and told herself it was nothing. But then another creak came, this time from her bedroom door. Emma froze. Her heart thumped in her chest. The bedroom door, which she had closed hours ago, slowly began to open. A gap appeared between the door and the frame, widening just slightly, as if someone or something was pushing it open from the other side. She held her breath, her eyes wide, staring at the dark crack that now split her room from the hallway. Her first instinct was to scream, but her throat went dry. She reached for her phone on the bedside table, but it was on the charger across the room. She could hear it buzzing faintly with notifications she hadn't checked, but even the soft hum felt loud in the quiet house. Emma tiptoed toward the charger, keeping her eyes fixed on the slowly opening door. Every step felt like it echoed in the room. By the time she reached the phone, the door was almost halfway open. A shadow stretched along the floor, creeping closer to her bed. She gripped the phone, shaking, and dialed 911. She whispered to the dispatcher, trying not to cry, "There's someone in my house, in my room." The operator asked her to stay calm, but Emma couldn't. She glanced at the door again and froze. A figure was standing in the hallway, just beyond the threshold. She couldn't make out any features, the lighting was too dim, but she could see the outline of a tall man. He was motionless, watching her. Her mind raced. She tried to remember everything her parents had taught her in case of an intruder. Run, hide, make noise if you can. But she felt paralyzed, stuck between fear and disbelief. Then the man moved, just a step forward. Emma's eyes widened as she realized he was slowly advancing into her room, silent except for the soft scuff of shoes against the carpet. She bolted under the bed, dragging the phone with her. Her small body pressed against the floor, every muscle tense. She could hear the intruder's footsteps moving closer, then stopping. A low, almost inaudible whisper floated from the darkness. "Emma." She pressed the phone closer to her mouth, whispering into it, trying not to breathe too loudly. The operator instructed her to stay hidden and assured her police were on their way. Emma didn't know if she would last that long. Her mind raced with every story she had ever heard about people who disappeared while home alone. Minutes passed like hours.
The intruder seemed to be searching methodically, moving from the bedroom to the hallway, pausing at the edge of the door. She could hear him sniffing, shifting his weight, almost as if he were enjoying the fear he was causing. Emma hugged herself tighter under the bed, fighting the urge to scream or bolt. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sound of sirens pierced the night. Emma's heart leapt. The man froze. He seemed to hesitate, then retreated toward the hallway and out of her line of sight. Within seconds, the police arrived, bursting into the house. The intruder was gone, vanished like smoke. The officer searched every corner, every room, but there was no sign of him. No fingerprints, no footprints, no evidence at all, except for the faint smell of tobacco in the air and the fact that he had been inches away from Emma's bed. One officer told her she was incredibly lucky. The intruder could have harmed her, and he had likely been casing the house for days, watching, learning. Emma's parents returned later that night, shocked and horrified. They installed cameras, reinforced locks, and made sure Emma had someone stay with her until she felt safe again. But Emma knew she would never feel the same. The house that once felt cozy now seemed like a trap. Each hallway and corner filled with potential danger. Even years later, she couldn't walk past a slightly open door without a shiver crawling up her spine. What made it worse was the uncertainty. The intruder had never been caught. He could have been anyone. Someone walking past, someone in the neighborhood, someone who knew she lived there alone. Emma learned that night that being home alone isn't about feeling grown up or responsible. It's about vulnerability. It's about realizing that freedom can vanish in a heartbeat, replaced by fear that someone, somewhere, might be watching you. Even now, when Emma tells her story, her voice shakes. The memory of that night, the slow creak of the bedroom door, the whisper of her name in the dark, it never leaves her. And she warns anyone who listens, the scariest things happen when you think you're safe, when you think you're alone, when you think the dark is empty, because sometimes it isn't.
The night it began, Daniel wasn't expecting anything unusual. He was 32, lived alone in a quiet suburb, and had spent the entire week working overtime at his IT job. Friday night was supposed to be simple. Cook dinner, watch a show, and sleep early. Instead, the rain started around 8 p.m., hammering the windows like something angry. Daniel didn't mind. Storms were comforting. They made the loneliness of the house feel less empty somehow. He microwaved leftover pasta, poured himself a drink, and sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. Around 8:47 p.m., his phone lit up with a call from a no-caller ID. He frowned. His company never called after hours. He never gave his number to strangers. Still, he answered. "Hello?" he said. For 5 seconds, nothing. Then he heard breathing, soft, slow, human, right against the microphone. "Daniel," the whisper whispered. He shot upright, blood turning cold. He didn't recognize the voice. Low, soft, calm. He hung up instantly. His first thought was that someone he knew was playing a prank, but he barely had friends, and none of them were the creepy joke type. He tried to brush it off and resumed eating. 10 minutes later, his phone rang again. No caller ID. His jaw clenched. He answered on speaker this time. "Who is this?" he demanded. The same whisper came back. "Daniel, I told you to check your back door." Daniel's stomach dropped. He froze. The room seemed to shrink around him, the shadows darker, the storm louder. Slowly, timidly, he turned his head toward the kitchen. The back door was visible from where he sat. Closed, deadbolted, nothing strange. He forced a laugh, though his voice cracked. "Nice try. I'm not falling for this." The whisper on the phone changed, something like amusement. "You didn't check." Daniel's heart kicked into overdrive. He stood, grabbed a kitchen knife, and walked slowly toward the back door. He reached out, hand shaking despite himself, and pressed his fingers against the lock. It was still locked. He exhaled a shaky breath, then froze. A detail he hadn't noticed before made his stomach twist. The chain lock, the one he always kept on, was dangling loose, open. He hadn't opened it. He hadn't touched it. He stepped backward in fear. His phone buzzed again with a text. From unknown. "Told you." The knife nearly slipped from his hand. He backed away from the kitchen altogether and locked himself in the living room. He turned off the lights and pulled the curtains shut. The room felt too quiet, too dark. He tried calling the police, but something terrifying happened. His call failed. No signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing. His router lights were off, but he hadn't touched anything. His hair on his arm stood up. Someone had cut the connection, physically or digitally. He grabbed his laptop, turned on the hotspot from his second phone, but the hotspot was disabled. Impossible. He rechecked settings. Nothing worked. It was like someone else was controlling his device. Then, his TV turned on by itself. Static. Loud, violent static filling the room. Daniel dropped to the floor. His heart hammered. He crawled behind the couch, clutching the knife, trying to stay silent. The static shifted. A voice emerged through it, digitally distorted but undeniably the same whisper. "Daniel, you shouldn't hide from me." He nearly screamed. He scrambled to unplug the TV, yanking the cord from the wall. The screen stayed on. "Daniel, come out." He threw a blanket over the screen to block the sound, but the voice continued beneath the fabric like something alive inside it. "You not alone." Daniel could barely breathe. He sat in the dark, knife shaking in his grip, eyes darting around. Then, a new sound. Not a whisper, not static, but the soft tap, tap, tap of someone typing. He turned toward his laptop. The screen was on. Lines of text typed themselves with horrifying speed. "You shouldn't have lived alone. You shouldn't have ignored the first call. I've been inside your system for months. Now I want to be inside the house." Daniel slammed the laptop shut, shaking uncontrollably. He lived alone. He changed his passwords weekly. He used firewalls, two-factor authentication, encrypted drives. No one should have been able to access anything. Unless it wasn't a hacker. Unless it was something else. Something inhuman, using the network as a doorway. He shut the curtains tighter, turned off every light, and sat in silence. But the typing continued anyway. His phone lit up again. Another call. He didn't want to answer. His thumb hovered over decline. The voice spoke through the phone speaker without him answering. "Daniel, look at the staircase." He froze. Slowly, terrified, he turned toward the stairs leading to the second floor. At first, nothing. Then, a shadow moved. A tall, thin silhouette, not walking, not stepping, just standing, still, watching. Daniel's scream lodged in his throat. The whisper in the phone deepened, layered, no longer human. "I told you I was inside." He scrambled toward the front door, slipping, nearly falling. He fumbled with the lock, shaking so hard he could barely turn it. He tried to pull the door open. It wouldn't budge. Not stuck. Held. held from the other side. He pulled harder, panic exploding in his chest. Then something spoke from the staircase. Not the phone, not the TV, not the laptop, but inside the damn house. Daniel. All the lights in the house shut off at once. He was blind, alone, trapped. He felt the air shift behind him, someone stepping closer. He didn't look back. He couldn't. He sprinted to the back door instead, slammed into it, unlocked it, yanked it open, and ran barefoot into the rain. He didn't stop running until he reached his neighbor's porch, drenched, shaking violently, shouting for help. The police searched his home. Nothing. No footprints. No signs of forced entry. No evidence of anyone else inside. His TV, laptop, Wi-Fi router, all unplugged when they arrived. His devices worked perfectly. They chalked it up to stress, exhaustion, imagination. But Daniel knew. He knew what he heard, what he saw. He moved out 2 weeks later. But on his last night in that house, after packing the final box, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it, paralyzed. Then, the voicemail notification appeared. He pressed play. The whisper. New house. Same network. See you soon, Daniel.
Mark had been working remotely for over a year, and he loved it. His apartment was small but modern in a quiet building. He liked the silence, the freedom to work late at night without interruptions, and the control over his environment. But that comfort ended on the night it all began. It was a Tuesday. He had stayed late at the office finishing a report, and by the time he arrived home, the city was dark, wet from a sudden rainstorm. Mark unlocked his apartment door and stepped inside dripping and tired. He flicked on the lights, set his briefcase down, and went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water. Everything seemed normal, too normal, he would later realize. Mark went about his night, showered, changed, and settled at his desk to finish some work. Around 11:30 p.m., he noticed something odd. His apartment felt different. Not in a way he could describe at first, but the air felt heavier, and the shadows in the corners of the room seemed darker than usual. He shook it off. He was tired. Then he heard it. A faint sound from his living room, almost like a sigh. He froze, listening. Nothing. He told himself it was the wind outside, rattling the window frames. But then again, a soft sigh, followed by what sounded like the faint scraping of furniture. Mark's heart rate increased. He thought maybe a neighbor had broken in somehow. He grabbed a lamp and crept toward the living room. Everything was exactly where it should be. Nothing had moved. But the feeling of being watched gnawed at him. He returned to his desk, trying to focus. The noise stopped, or at least it seemed to. Minutes later, a whisper. A soft, distant whisper that made his skin crawl. It was so faint he couldn't make out words, just syllables, like someone muttering to themselves. He froze. The whisper seemed to come from everywhere at once, the corners, the walls, even the ceiling. He convinced himself it was a dream or exhaustion and went to bed. But sleep didn't come. Around 2 a.m., he woke to a cold draft. The bedroom door was closed. He remembered locking it, but now the handle was slightly turned. He sat up slowly, trying not to breathe loudly. The room was pitch black, except for the glow of the streetlight through the blinds. And then he saw it. A shadow at the edge of the bed. Not like a normal shadow cast by light. This one moved independently, darker than darkness itself. He couldn't make out a shape, just a presence. He froze, muscles locked, unable to move. The shadow shifted closer. Mark's phone was on the nightstand, within reach. He grabbed it, intending to call 911, but the moment he touched it, the screen went black. No signal, no light, nothing. The whisper returned. Mark. It was his name, drawn out, cold, almost loving in tone, but utterly wrong. He tried to speak. His voice came out as a whisper. Who's there? No answer. Just the shifting presence in the corner, growing closer. He jumped out of bed and ran toward the door, but it slammed shut in front of him, hard. He rattled the handle, panicked, realizing something unexplainable was holding it shut. Mark ran back to the bed. The shadow now covered the corner of the room entirely. He could feel its presence pressing on him like the weight of water in deep ocean trenches. He stumbled back, eyes wide, heart hammering, trying to rationalize. But there was no rational explanation. The next night, he tried sleeping with all the lights on. He set up cameras, audio recorders, motion detectors. Nothing worked. Every night around the same time, 2 a.m., the presence returned. The whispering, the scraping, the shadows moving against the light. He stopped telling friends. They would laugh, call him paranoid. But he knew what he felt. Every time he entered the apartment during the day, the air felt heavy, almost alive, like something was waiting for night to fall. Then came the signs. Objects shifted. Small things at first, like his coffee mug on the counter not being where he left it. Then bigger things. A chair moved across the room, the television turned on by itself, faint fingerprints on mirrors when he lived alone. Mark started sleeping in the living room with the lights on, door locked, a baseball bat by his side. But the whispers didn't stop. They became intelligible. Stay. Don't leave. Here with me. Mark realized the presence wasn't trying to hide anymore. It wasn't content with lurking in the shadows. It wanted him. One night, he finally mustered the courage to confront it. He shouted, "Who are you? What do you want?" The room went silent. The air grew heavy. Then a single sentence, calm, almost human in tone, but utterly wrong. "I'm your guest. I've been waiting for you." The next morning, Mark's apartment was just as it always had been. The shadow gone, the objects in place, the lights functioning normally. But he knew the truth. Whatever this presence was, it wasn't leaving. It was waiting for night, waiting for him to be vulnerable again. Mark moved out weeks later. He rented a smaller apartment across town, hoping distance would end it. The first night, he slept soundly. No shadows, no whispers, no cold presence. Relief. Then at 2:03 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from unknown number. New home, still mine. Mark never slept again. Every night the feeling returns, the whispering, the shadows, the pressure in the room. He learned something terrifying. Sometimes the scariest intruder isn't someone breaking in. Sometimes it's something that doesn't need doors or windows. Something that never leaves. Something that waits inside. Mark's apartment is still empty. He doesn't live there anymore. But if you ever visit the building at night, residents sometimes report a cold draft, soft whispers, and shadows moving in the corner of a room that should be empty. And if you're home alone, you might just hear it, too.